If you're struggling to create depth in your paintings, or your paintings just look completely flat, then try out this simple painting exercise. It's going to quickly improve your landscape painting. Now, what this is to help you understand tonal values within the landscape, which is how light or dark your subject is. And this is what's going to create those tiers of depth within your painting. So if your paintings are looking flat, then this is really going to help you. Now, in this video, I was working with one of my students and demonstrating a painting to her, this simple painting exercise, to help her understand the tonal values in the landscape so that she can create depth within her paintings. Obviously, we're going to be sketching that. And this is the other cool thing now about having your reference sketches. I'm going to refer to this when I sketch out the composition. So the reference photo there, and I'm actually going to refer to the black and white photo to paint this value study. And mainly my sketch. Let's pop that back over there. So I'm just going to sketch the composition just with burnt sienna and liquid. So we're just using three colors, as I say: titanium white, burnt sienna, ultramarine blue. So it's a real good exercise for helping you to understand values in the landscape and painting tonality. This is the way you can find the middle, is you just imagine a cross like this, and then I reckon the middle is probably roughly around there. So I'll just mark a little dot. Okay. Yeah, just feel free to ask any questions whilst I'm doing this.
Okay.
So I reckon we've got our pathway that's probably around. So I'm just making a few marks here, around like that. Okay. I'm using a bigger brush actually to sketch this out. You can do this with a smaller one if you want. It's more just because I'm about to use this brush for part of the painting anyway. So it's kind of like to save on brushes. So I'll just mark out that main tree stem. And there's the other one. And then I'll do some stems along there. And just the tree canopy.
I just pulled up my black and white of the reference photo, and
Oh, yeah.
do you want? Yeah. So if you're going to use this in your YouTube, do you want to put an insert in the corner of your reference?
Yeah, I'll just do that. Yeah, I need to double. Yeah, did you say that was a royalty-free image actually as well? That's something I need to double check.
It is.
Oh yeah, that's cool.
Yes.
So if I just credit whoever took the photograph, I've changed it up anyway. So here's some of our trees and the background. Yeah, so next week we'll actually make a start on painting this for real. But yeah, I just as I say, just understanding the values, I think is just the key to creating depth in your painting and just making those landforms recede, making it look much more realistic. And That's those fence posts. I'm just going to start with the darkest values first. It's always a little bit different when you're doing a value study. It's probably not as essential to paint your dark values first as it is if you're painting it in color, but even then it's still going to help you create your tonal dynamic in the scene that you're painting. So with burnt sienna and ultramarine blue, when you combine them, they make a near black, and that's because burnt sienna is a dark orange, and orange is the complementary opposite to blue on the color wheel. So that's the way we can create a really dark tone with those colors. And then we can make those neutral grays by mixing in titanium white, as you'll see in a moment. So I'm just going to mark out just some of these stems here. Oops. I'm just marking out the main stem at the moment. I'll come back to it. And those fence posts I'll paint in a bit as well. So normally when I paint trees, I actually normally paint them first and then paint around it afterwards, because you can use the sky to fill in the negative spaces around the trees. So I think in this case, I'm actually going to just start marking in the tree foliage. And this value study is not going to be super detailed or anything. It's really just to get the values in there, and just so you can have a better understanding of the sort of tonal dynamic in the scene. But I'm actually going to go for literally, just creating black and white. So you can see there, but when you mix in the white with the ultramarine blue and burnt sienna, you can get these beautiful grays with them. So you can use these in your you can use these in your actual paintings where you're going to use your full palette of color to mix shadow areas, and then you can even add in a little bit of alizarin crimson, for example, if you just want to tint it a little bit with some violet. But I'm just going to start just marking in where the tree canopy is. So trees are some of the darkest values in the landscape because there's a lot of occlusion shadows, and a lot of trees have dark colored foliage, especially conifer trees. However, we're also keeping in mind that these trees are now in autumn or the fall, and because they're turning yellow, they're then not as dark as they would be as if they're in full leaf in the middle of summer. So that's something to keep in mind. I'm going to have to mix a lot more color here, actually. And normally when I mix these types of grays as well, I tend to edge them more on the blue side for a lot of shadows so that it doesn't look muddy.
Okay.
And the colors just look nicer in the landscape anyway. However, there are certainly plenty of instances where you'll need to mix a color where it's more, say, on the burnt sienna end, like if you're painting some rocks, for example, or perhaps some really murky clouds, you might have a few hints of burnt sienna coming through. That's what I love about these flat brushes as well. You can just cover ground really quickly with them.
I'm liking flat brushes more and more.
Yeah, they're brilliant. They're the brushes that I use the most. You can just get so many awesome effects with them. Just really nice painterly brush marks. And as I say, just great for just covering ground really quickly. Yeah, you definitely want to try and make your brush marks if you can with intention. And it does come with more painting experience. But just that kind of confident brush marks, which is why I like plein air painting so much, and a lot of these plein air artists where they're just using loose gestural brush marks. Yeah, they've totally like nailed their colors and values, and it just looks really good.
Mm.
Move that light a little bit. That's better. Okay. I think I might actually have to squeeze out some more paint, see?
Mm.
So there's already some darker areas down here. As I say, this isn't going to be a detailed painting or anything like that. It's really purely to just communicate the values and get an idea of the values in the scene. So we'll come back to that bit anyway. I reckon I could possibly use this same brush for the whole painting actually, but we'll see. I'm actually just going to squeeze out some more paint in a minute. Just give me a sec. I definitely didn't have enough paint here. So I'm just going to squeeze out a big chunk. This is probably burnt sienna is definitely one of my most used colors, and the cool thing about it is it's one of the cheaper colors, so it doesn't matter that you use quite a lot of it. And then ultramarine blue, if I use even more ultramarine blue than I do burnt sienna, and then titanium white. So titanium white and ultramarine blue, they're definitely my two most used colors. I'm probably all right for titanium white in the bottom. I need to grab some more, grab some. So the next thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to work on the sky. And skies are one of the lighter values to be found in the landscape. So we'll certainly communicate this in this painting. So I might even just mix in a little bit of this. Let's see what that looks like. I'm just using a bit of Liquid Original here as well. I still haven't tried out my oleo gel yet.
No?
No, I am going to try it out. I had some paintings that I needed to finish that I was still using liquid with, but there's certainly some new ones I'm going to start, and I'm going to try out the oleo gel.
I like it.
Yeah, I can't wait to try it out actually, because yeah, I really want to limit the amount of liquid I'm using in the studio. I'll still use it for plein air painting because it's just really useful, and obviously it's useful if you're trying to get paintings done quickly. We need a lot more titanium white there.
Started using in the studio just because of liquid, the solvent-free Gamblin.
Oh yeah. So so that's an alternative to liquid, is it, or is it like
Yep.
oleo?
It's like oil or liquid. It's an alternative to liquid.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I mean it's solvent free, and it's better, it's nicer in the studio.
Yeah, I might try that actually.
Yeah, Gamblin.
I mean, don't get me wrong, liquid's a great product, but I'm sort of well aware that it's a little bit toxic.
I've started just using it for outside.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll come back to this in a moment. So the next thing I'm going to paint here is the hills in the background. So they're going to be getting darker, but they're still going to be way lighter than the foliage in these trees here. So I'm just going to work off this existing mixture and just make it a bit darker. So let's see how we do here. There we go. So as I said before, these color mixes, the ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, and titanium white, you can use that combination for so many shadow colors. So you can use it in rocks, especially in the foreground. You can use it for shadows in midground and background hills. You'd want to make it so it's more on the blue side. But there's so many uses for it. You can use it for cloud shadows. Probably you'd want to mix in a tiny amount of alizarin crimson or a quinacridone magenta or something, just to give it a little violet tint. You'd only need the tiniest amount. But you can create some just really beautiful shadow colors with just those three colors. Tree stems, it's really great for painting tree stems as well. For example, trees such as poplar trees, combination of those colors is really good. Gum trees, if you're painting Australian scenes, for example. Okay, so as I'm painting these foothills here, I'm just darkening the value slightly, just to show perhaps that there's something a bit closer to the foreground, but it's not too dark. And then it's here we've got these midground trees. Let's see. So we're getting a bit darker, but then most of these trees in the midground here, what's going on there? Most of these trees in the midground have already lost their leaves anyway, so they're not going to be too dark. Okay. So I'm just marking those in here. So as I said, trees are some of the darkest values in the landscape, the upright of the trees. And just going to what the artist John Carlson has said in his book Carlson's Guide to Landscape Painting, he basically simplified the landscape into sort of four main zones, where you've got the arch of the sky, which is generally the lightest value in the landscape. Then you've got the flat plains, which are the grass, which are also pretty light, and you'll see that in this painting in a moment. And then we got the slanting plains of the hills and mountains. They're darker, as you can see in this one. And then you've got the uprights, the trees, and they're the darkest values in the landscape, usually. So it's a real good simplified rule to remember.
Yeah, it is good.
It's so cool because it's just so easy to remember, especially if you're outdoors, plein air painting, for example, and you can just remember that. That's why I also like the compositions that Edgar Payne uses and summarized and depicted in his book, Composition of Outdoor Painting, because loads of those compositions are just really easy to remember. And then when you are doing things like painting outdoors, you can just remember those compositions, and you might see something in the landscape and go, oh, an S composition would really suit that, like there's a river in there or something, or perhaps a steelyard composition, which is kind of what this landscape is here. We've got a big mass there, and this other mass, this other tree is kind of sort of counterbalancing it. Okie dokie. So I'm going to start working towards the foreground. So I'm going to be painting some of the grass here. So I'm going to lighten the value by just adding some more titanium white. And it's possible, I can't remember I'd have to look at the color photo actually. I think some of that grass might have been in shadow, but I'm not sure. But yeah, I'm just lightening the value here for this grass. Also think I just want to break up that line of trees a little bit as well. So perhaps we can. So another thing I try and do is just break up some of these lines. There we go. I'll come back to that in a sec. Let me just clean my brush here. This is cool. I've only used one brush so far. I've got to be honest, I don't enjoy cleaning up brushes.
No, who does?
Yes. I do know a way that you can clean multiple brushes in seconds, and I'm going to be making that. I'm going to make that as one of the modules in the beginner's landscape painting course. So I will get to that very soon because that's one of the next upcoming modules. But yeah, there's a way that you can clean your brushes where you can just clean multiple brushes within like 30 seconds, basically.
Good thing to know.
Yeah, you can literally do it, and I reckon you could totally clean all your brushes. Well, it depends how many you use, but you could clean a load of brushes in under a minute.
Wow.
It works best with flat brushes as well. Doesn't work so well with dagger brushes, I've found. I don't really use dagger brushes all that much. I use them a little bit, but they're not. I'm mainly a flat brush painter. Just love flat brushes. So here I'm painting the grass, and grass is one of the lighter values in the landscape. So making this lighter. Get some more white in there. Alrighty, just painting in between these fence posts here. And I can add some texture to the grass in a bit, but we'll just do it like this for the moment. Alrighty, good in there. Now the path here is definitely another light value in the landscape as well. So I'm gonna paint that next. So I found that a lot actually with yeah, some pathways, because sometimes the ground can be quite light in value. It depends where you are, of course, and what I guess the geology of the ground that you're walking on. But certainly some of these like metalled roads, if you see what I mean, can actually be quite light in value. Probably, actually, I'm just looking at the reference photo. I'll need to add some darker tones around there, which is actually consistent with what's in the photo anyway, but it's going to be very easy to adjust the values. So let's see how we do. I mean, probably one of the things I would say is if you're having difficulty achieving depth in your paintings, and most of the time it's always to do with value. I mean, the color mixing is obviously important as well, and you've got to make sure that you get the saturation of your colors correct. But a lot of the time when people struggle, it's because they're struggling with values, and it's probably because they don't understand it. And I've found that if you just have it explained to you properly, like, you know, with me 10 years ago, that it makes your whole painting process a lot easier and clearer. So this is a really good exercise to do if that's something you're struggling with creating depth in your paintings, then just take your time and do a few of these value studies. Just take your reference photo, flick it to black and white, and just literally just copy it and match all the lights and darks in it. And it will just help you to understand your paintings better. It'll help you to better plan your paintings as well. And
I plan to do that.
Yeah. And as I say, I always recommend when you start a painting is to paint your dark values and shadows first.
Yeah, because that's one thing I've noticed is things change.
Yeah.
Once
especially
you're mixing a color and you put it down and next to another color, it's too dark or too light.
Yeah. It's also relative to the colors that are around it as well. So I found that when you paint all the darks first, then it's much easier to gauge the tone of the color that you're going to put next to it, if that makes sense. So say you've got, you know, a mountain and you've got, say, 3/4 of it in shadow, it's going to make it a lot easier to paint those areas where the sunlight's shining on it and also get the saturation of the color right as well. I'm just going to darken this grass up a little bit here. But yeah, if you're struggling with creating the depth in your painting and, you know, making those landforms recede or whatever, then it's worth just spending the time doing a few of these value studies and just taking the time to just learn how to do it until you familiarize yourself with the values in the landscape, and it will make your painting process so much easier. So I'm just going to paint this other area of grass along here. Yeah, when I was struggling with my painting, and because I'm a self-taught artist, and I mean my fault as well, because I didn't really sort of bother to learn any color theory or art theory, and I was just painting intuitively and running into lots and lots of problems because I didn't really understand tonal values or even color mixing. And I think if I'd have just done a few of these types of exercises or just had someone teach this to me from the get-go, I would have saved myself probably years of just struggling and failed paintings and frustration. Hey, I hope you're enjoying the video so far. Now, let me ask you something. Are you struggling with your paintings? Are your compositions, tonal values, or color mixing holding you back from creating beautiful paintings that you'd imagined? Also, do you want to sell your art, but you're not able to get to that standard where you'd be able to sell them? Well, I've been in that situation myself where I was just floundering with my art for years and struggling and couldn't seem to get to the next level. And luckily, in the end, I was able to get some help. Now, I'd like to help you and inspire you by giving you access to some free full-length painting tutorial videos. Not only that, also a free landscape painting success masterclass and a landscape painting blueprint ebook, plus loads of other free content. So if you'd like to get access to that, then just click the link below. I also recommend, if you're starting out, I know you're not a beginner, but just for beginners in general, that you paint on a white surface. I know there's a lot of artists that paint on a toned surface, and there's nothing wrong with painting on a toned surface. You can get some nice effects with it. It warms up your painting, but you'll find that when you're starting out, and especially if you're learning about tonal values, that it makes life easier if you paint on a white surface, especially if you're doing a value study like this.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, your colors, as I say, your colors will be cleaner, because it's not to say you shouldn't paint on a toned surface, but I did it for quite a few years, and I found that often my darks were coming out too dark, and then I'd have to go back and readjust all the values, and that was getting to be a problem sometimes. So yeah, I found that painting on a white background, again, they've both got their pluses and minuses, but I found that my colors were looking cleaner, and it was just easier to get the values that I wanted. So don't get me wrong, right? There are still sometimes, times I will tone my canvas. It depends what I'm painting. I've done a few acrylic paintings recently where I purposely wanted an underpainting to show through as part of the effect, because I use much looser brushwork, and it worked pretty well. But generally, when I'm doing oil paintings and painting scenes, landscapes, I paint on a white surface. I just think it makes life easier, and your colors just look cleaner. So what I'm going to do now we've kind of roughly blocked in the area, I'm just gonna work on some of this tree foliage here. There's a lot of half tones in this tree, but it's definitely slightly more on the darker side, even though they're autumn trees. Now I'm just gonna just feather some of this blocks of foliage here. I'm kind of treating this like a plein air painting, really. Just shoving some of those lighter values. So just marking in some of that foliage, and I'm just going to add a few darker areas in there as well. Get a bit of lip one in there. So it's going to be super dark. So I'm just marking in some of the occlusion shadows that are in this, denser areas of foliage. As I say, I'm not going for detail here in this tree. If I was doing this as a proper painting where I was using all my colors, I'd still mark it out like this, how I'm doing now, and then I'd wait for it to dry, and then I would start adding detail, like the suggestion of leaves, that kind of thing. So I mean, we'll obviously do that when we come to paint this, like using all the colors. But I just want to remark in just some of these darker areas within the tree's canopy here. So in general, the tree canopy is going to look a bit darker than what's behind it anyway, just because it's nearer to the foreground. So as I say, we'll find our darkest darks and our lightest lights in the foreground. So I'm just adding a few darks here. Okay, I'm just going to leave that for the moment, and I'm going to use another brush now. Let's see, tell you what, I want to use a number two flat brush. So I'm going to start painting in some more of the darks that are in the scene here. And start painting some of these tree stems. And let's just re-emphasize this one. Oh, and there's obviously one of the main trees in the scene that we're painting. Okay. So even when I'm blocking in a painting, normally when I've got the canvas covered like I have here, I'll go back across the whole thing and do something called restating the dark. So it's just restating the dark values that are in the scene, and then I'll let it dry. Okay. Got painting in some of these branches as well. Alrighty. But also still helpful to like refer to your reference sketch as well, which I'll often do whilst I'm blocking in a painting. And I'm just painting a suggestion of like some of this network of stems and branches that are in the background. Also, there's some shadows here as well. And I'll start marking in those fence posts. And the next thing, the shadows that are coming from them. Even the trees. And I'm going to start marking in some of these stems here as well, like this main tree. Just clean my brush a sec. So these stems are quite dark and even in these mid-ground trees, but as I paint them, I can even let some of the existing color that I've mixed in just blend in a little bit, so it just lightens the value of the stems slightly, just because the stems are a bit further away, the tree stems, that is. We're good in there. And then we can just add a little bit of texture to some of these trees in the mid-ground with our darker value paint as well. Oops. There's also a shadow being cast probably around here as well from that tree. So we'll just put that like that. Okay. We're getting there.
Mm.
I'm just putting a few dark marks in the grass here as well, just because even though grass is some of the lightest values you'll find in the landscape, you're still going to get it depends on the light levels, but quite often you'll still get strong shadows in them if the sun's out. So you can just mark in a few kind of dark areas like that. Also, there's like kind of leaves and things on the path here. So we can start just marking in the edge of the path. Perhaps we get some just a little bit texture in that road path, whatever. Yeah, I'm just tidying this up now because it's actually almost finished.
Looks good to me.
Awesome. Yeah, as I say, this exercise is just all about understanding the values in the scene that you're painting. And you don't have to do a value study every time you do a painting. It's just a good thing to do a few of them if you're learning, or you're just trying to familiarize yourself with tonal values that you'll find in the landscape.
I think it's a great exercise. I do.
Yeah. And whilst this exercise, it kind of, might seem a bit like basic or something like that. Doing exercises like this will save you a lot of time in the long run of time wasted with paintings that failed. because you didn't understand this stuff, if that makes sense. So it's really worth doing it if you're learning, I think. Let's see if we can
Oh, I do.
just type.
I
Yeah,
absolutely do.
just tidy up this background a bit more. We even add some sky holes in some of these trees. There we go. Oops. Yeah, let's put that like that. And let me get my other brush. Just tidy up this area as well. It's always quite good to just soften the edges of some of these lines as well.
Been working on edges lately.
Yeah.
There's nothing that draws your attention more than a hard edge.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, one of the things I do when I paint my seascapes, when I paint my seascape paintings, is even when with the horizon line, I'll actually just soften it a lot and actually even kind of blur it out a little bit so it's not so harsh. Because obviously with a seascape, that's that really is a straight edge there.
I want to paint a seascape this winter. My winter.
Yes. Yeah, I love painting seascapes.
Although today, in the coldest month of the year for us, it's 10.5 degrees Celsius.
Oh wow.
I know.
That that's that's quite warm for where you are for that time of year, isn't it?
Yeah, usually it's about -9.5 about
Wow.
this time of year. Yeah, it's wild. And it's going to be even warmer by Wednesday.
Oh wow. It's funny, I
I'm
just
setting
looked at the weather
all
in New
kinds of,
Zealand and they're forecasting an unusually cold snap, and it's still summer here. And they're even talking about there might even be snow in the South Island. So
whoa, in the
yeah,
summer.
I mean, it would be on the mountains. You know what? When I lived in Queenstown, which is a mountain town in New Zealand, and was quite surprised that actually even in summer, if you had a cold snap come through, that you'd get snow on the mountains. I was like, whoa! Even in summer, that happens. I wasn't expecting that.
No. Mm-mm.
I'm just going back over the sky here again. Oops, I need some lighter value color there. Use a bit more white.
Yeah.
Break up this tree a little bit. And I'll add some sky holes as well to the tree. This tree here. That's a cool little effect you can do when you're painting trees, um, to help define the shapes more. Is you can just pop in a few sky holes in there in the foliage, and it kind of makes it look more like a tree.
Mm.
Okay, I think we're almost done here. I just want to tidy up this tree canopy a little bit. bulking up the foliage a little bit more on this tree here that's in the midground. Oops, there you go. And let's just use a small brush for this last part. Just want to tidy up some of these tree stems. So just painting the suggestion of a few branches here. Alrighty. Almost done here, I think.
Yeah.
Let's just tidy up this area here. I'd say that's pretty much it.
I'd say, yeah.
So
Looks
can you
good,
see
Sam.
cheers, thanks. Can you see that just going back to the values here, that sky, some of the lightest values here, it's obviously cloudy in this scene, or there was a bit of cloud. Grass is pretty light. This road is actually probably one of the lightest values in the whole scene. Then we've got these background hills that are getting darker. We've got these trees here that really, if they were in summer, they would be a lot darker, but because they've lost a lot of most of their leaves, and you're seeing the sort of bare, stems and twigs of these trees, the values are a lot lighter. So that's something to consider for winter trees. And then we've got these areas of foliage where the mid-tones are, and they're lighter because it's autumn and the leaves are turning color. However, it's still a reasonably dark tone, but not as dark as it would be as if it was in full leaf in summer. And then our darkest values are in these tree stems, and these fence posts.
Right.
Let's just tidy up this bit here, make that look a bit more random. Add a bit of texture to the grass here. I'll tell you what. Let me just move that light out of the way a little bit. Because what I can do now is oops, just knocked my camera over. Hang on. I'll just peel off some of this masking tape and you can see what it looks like. So that's the other thing, when you take the masking tape off, you get a nice straight edge.
Yeah.
Oops, hang on, still keep that bit on for the moment.
one of
very
the benefits
satisfying.
of linen is that it won't tear the paper, because oil paper would tear with the masking
Oh
tape.
yeah, it would. Yeah, it might do. Yeah, yeah. I just like painting on linen, and you know, you can get these, like, this is just an offcut that I got from an
Mhm.
art store, and some art stores they just have offcuts from linen, and they'll just sell them in rolls like way cheaper than they would normally be, and it's perfect for doing like exercises like this as well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
cool.
looks
So yeah,
great.
what do you think of that?
I liked it. Yeah. Of course, mine's not going to come out quite as good, I bet, but I'm going to
Oh,
give
I
it a
reckon it
whirl.
will. I reckon it will.